my channel. Welcome back to another video. I'm Jessie and you're watching.
Waiting for tonight.
So excited to finally be filming this video. I feel like that's now the tagline, my introduction to literally all of my videos because I've been so bad at filming lately. I feel like I now start all of my videos with,
I'm so excited to be filming this video.
Because A, filming gets me out of bed, and B,
I've been a trash booktuber this year.
I'm excited to be finally filming this video because I talked about the fact that I wanted to launch a thriller series on my channel in my 2020 goals for my channel video. I'll leave that link down below in case you're interested in watching it. But I made y'all all these promises of things I was gonna do on my channel, things I was really excited about, and
then I proceeded to do none of it.
I'm excited to be slowly getting back on track with the content that I want to make here on Bowties and Books. This is going to be my introductory film to my series, which I'm going to be calling Thriller Thursdays. Now, I am filming this on a Friday, or is it Saturday? I think it's Saturday now.
What even are calendar days anymore?
I'm not sure when I'm gonna post this. I don't think I'll be able to wait until next Thursday to give y'all this video because I've been waiting long enough and so have you. But from now on, I'm going to be posting these videos one Thursday a month, maybe more if they are really popular and if y'all are really enjoying them. But this is going to be a series where I pick a few books in the horror or thriller genre, and each of these books will have a certain theme, and on Thriller Thursday, I'm just going to be talking about horror and thrillers that I've read recently and giving you my thoughts on them. Unless you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, you're probably not aware of the fact that I am a huge horror and thriller fan. I grew up watching The Silence of the Lambs. I grew up reading those books. My mother cultivated a love of horror and thrillers in me when I was very young because she herself is a huge fan. So growing up, I watched almost every work that Wes Craven has created. Movies like Candyman,
Be my victim,
which came out in 1992, were just staples in my household. And it was always really weird to me that I would go to my friends' houses and I would suggest watching like a gruesome horror or thriller movie and they would be like,
what the fuck? Like, my parents don't let me watch that.
but like, I had a cool mom, yo. One of the things that my mom and I have always bonded over is our love of horror. And we both firmly believe that fear and movies and media centering the idea of fear are very cathartic. I firmly believe that the horror genre is one of the greatest tools that we have at our disposal for providing social commentary. Also a fantastic way to explore the things that we are afraid of and what that says about ourselves, our culture, and our society. Horrors and thriller are so often seen as kind of a mindless, non-academic genre, but it is one of the most fantastically dissectable genres that exist out there, in my opinion. So criminally underrated, and there's so many really fantastic themes that you can dissect out of various horror and thriller works. So if you're curious about some of my favorite movies and directors in this genre, I'm a huge fan of everything Mike Flanagan. Everything that Mike Flanagan has put out is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Tales from the Crypt is also a really perfect example of how horror can be used to provide social commentary. Editing Jessie, hey, I meant to say Tales from the Hood, not Tales from the Crypt. However, I did also watch Tales from the Crypt with my mother as a kid, and both scared the shit out of me. And if you're not familiar, this is another thing that I grew up on, which is this horror anthology of stories that are centric to the concerns of African Americans. And it basically was this horror anthology that took everyday fears that Black people are super fucking scared of and turned it into horror. Black people were able to look at horror and see themselves reflected, and also use that as an opportunity to kind of critically look inward at why we're afraid of the things that we're afraid of. So we're going to be talking about tons of tropes that exist in the horror thriller genre, and this episode is going to focus exclusively on the haunted house. Why are we so afraid of haunted houses? Why does this trope stick with so many of us and get under our skin? And I'm also going to be talking about 3 books that I read recently that feature haunted houses and giving you my thoughts on them. One of which is going to be Mexican Gothic, which was one of my top 4 releases of 2020, and definitely was a book that wasted my time. The books that I'm going to be talking about in this episode is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, the infamous The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and Theme Music by T. Marie Vendelli. These are all works that center around the notion of the haunted house, and all of them are Gothic in style. So before I get into my reviews for these 3 Gothic horror novels, I'm gonna talk about the mythos of the haunted house and give my thoughts on why this trope remains so prevalent to this day. The notion of the haunted house, in my opinion, sticks with so many of us because it activates our fear of what happens behind closed doors. The home is a very private and an isolated setting, a setting in which a lot of us feel safe and vulnerable and can finally be ourselves. But what happens when the home turns into something that is innately horrific? In my opinion, it then warps your idea of comfort and of safety when the very, very place that is supposed to be the safest for you becomes one of torment and trauma and fear. I think that a lot of us can relate to that on some level, whether it's from personal experience or can simply imagine what it would be like, or those who are lucky enough to not have that experience can use their imagination stations and simply imagine what it would be like to have such a warm and comforting space to invert and turned into something that is unrecognizable. I also think that the reason that haunted houses freak so many of us out is because it activates an innate claustrophobia that a lot of us do have, this idea that you are trapped within 4 walls and you can't escape. Haunted house movies and books and TV shows force us to acknowledge our fear of being trapped, our fears of not being able to escape, and also when a protagonist is put in that situation, you see who they really are. You see who a person is when they are backed into a corner, when they are trapped in a haunted house and have no means of escape. They then are literally forced to confront their deepest and most horrific fears. And it can feel really cathartic to watch somebody do that. It sounds backwards to say that watching a haunted house movie is cathartic, but if you really think about it, it is. There's nothing more therapeutic than watching somebody confront their most deepest fears. There's also nothing more intimate about it. And that's why some of my favorite romance stories take place in horror films, because for me, love and romance and even platonic love, familial love, isn't represented through ooey gooey, gushy, feel-good romance stories when there's very little conflict. But love for me is what happens when everybody is in danger and the 2 of you or more of you have to bind together in order to survive and also prove that you love each other more than you do yourself as an individual. I could go on and on and on about this topic, but I am not going to. Let's just get started with the reviews. And I think the first book that I am going to review is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is a classic Gothic horror novel. This particular story has inspired so many adaptations. I didn't realize that The Haunting, the movie The Haunting, was based off of this book. That is another movie that I grew up watching with my mother and absolutely loved. It freaked me out so much and it frustrated me as a child because it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. It also inspired Mike Flanagan's directed Netflix TV show The Haunting of Hill House, which is a TV show that I have seen 4 times all the way through. The most incredible character development, the familial dynamics are amazing. The special effects is just peak amazing. And also the storytelling as well as the horror and fear elements are just so freaking fantastically done.
Mike Flanagan is behind it, so of course it would be.
Dr. Montague's entire life is surrounding the idea of the paranormal. He has been searching high and low for the ultimate haunted house when he hears of Hill House, a dark, abandoned mansion that sits at the top of a hill in a sleepy town that nobody will go near, especially after dark. Dr. Montague then vets a small group of people who have been shown to possess abilities that may wake up whatever is living inside of Hill House. We have Theo, who is a confirmed psychic, and Eleanor, who has had some experiences with poltergeists and other medium-style encounters. But as this cast of characters moves into Hill House, of course, nothing is what it seems, and we end up being taken on this creepy, slowly unraveling, and desperately Gothic journey that envelops the reader with not only a suffocating sense of claustrophobia, but also a deep, deep impending sense of doom. I'm so glad that I finally read this book, and I love this edition. It is from Penguin Classics Horror collection. There is an incredible foreword that really helps bring the story together. One of my favorite things about this book is that Hill House itself becomes a character, and that's another trope that I really love. I absolutely love the idea of personification, and this house is 100% a character in the story. I can only imagine how creepy this story would have been back in the day, and I can definitely see how it has been the inspiration for so many incredible adaptations. In my opinion, the writing is steady and kind of sleepy. It's not a kind of action-driven story. It's definitely more hands-off, especially with the character building. By the way, Theo is definitely a lesbian. This is one of those books that you can't say too much about because so little actually happens that to say really anything would give it away. It's one of those books that, like I said, it's not super action-y, but it's about the journey. It's about the sense of doom that is slowly creeping into your heart with every page that you turn. It's highly readable, and I really, really enjoyed the story. I actually loved it. This is definitely going in my classic book hall of fame. The ending of this book
shook me.
I should have seen it coming because the groundwork was definitely laid. Definitely you are seeing one of the characters in particular slowly dissolve into madness, which is another thing that I really, really enjoy.
Because I'm sick.
I specifically want to get this edition. It's just completely stunning and amazing and Halloweeny. I'm gonna try and read this again for Halloween. Definitely recommend. Theme music is another one of those haunted house stories, but it's one of those, is the house haunted or is it not actually haunted? Is the house haunted or is our protagonist just nuts? This was one of my most highly anticipated releases of 2019, and it ended up making it into one of my books that wasted my time videos, which is a series that I do where I rant about books that
wasted my time.
But there were things that I did really enjoy about this book, and that's why I am featuring it on this series. I do think that a lot of people could get a lot out of this book, a lot more than I did. It just simply wasn't for me. But this is a story about 26-year-old Dixie, who when she was just 1 year old, her entire family was butchered right before her infant eyes. She was then adopted by her aunt and uncle, but she never stopped wondering about why her father went crazy and murdered her 2 brothers and mother. And also, why did he leave her alive? So in typical white girl fashion, when the home that her family was butchered in goes up for sale 25 years later, she's like, you know what? I'm gonna buy that home and I'm gonna move into it. And her boyfriend is like, hey, honey, could we maybe not do that? And she's like, no, it's happening. I hated Dixie as a main character, and I usually do not need to like a protagonist in order to enjoy the story. Like, if the story is good, it really doesn't matter to me if I connect with the protagonist or anything like that. I just simply hated her.
So deeply.
But the biggest reason that I was unable to enjoy theme music is because Dixie sexually assaults and harasses a male character, and this kind of is seen in the context of the book as a quirky, funny, not really all that serious thing to do, and I personally thought it was reprehensible. Unfortunately, because of the way that it was handled within the book, it just sends the message that it's okay to do this kind of thing to men because they're men, and it's like quirky when girls do it, but when men do it, it's inappropriate. And that just like really, really fucking pissed me off, because sexual assault, no matter who is the perpetrator, is wrong, and I want to see that depicted as wrong if an author is going to address that topic, you know? Let's talk about the good things regarding theme music. The gore and the horror really, really satisfied me. It was great. If you're looking for a gruesome, disturbing, kind of shocking read, you're definitely gonna wanna pick this up. There is a lot of horror comedy and just like a lot of jokes and kind of gallows humor, which I'm not a huge fan of. Unfortunately, it came off as really cheesy to me. And I think most people who like horror, especially if you like comedic horror, will actually really, really like the writing. To me, it just was trying too hard to be funny. There's a really great psychological component where you're trying to figure out what's going on. If you enjoy a good mystery, the mystery at the heart of this novel, I think, is pretty well done. I think that if you are super, super sharp at guessing plots and like where a thriller is going to go, you might be able to guess it. If you did guess the ending of this book, let me know, but don't spoil it down below for anybody. I ended up giving this, I think, like a 2.5 out of 5 stars just because of the issues that I had with the book. As far as a piece of haunted house horror, I think that this would be a really good book to pick up. And now our star of the show, Mexican Gothic. I think this book is on literally everybody's most anticipated list, and I thankfully got sent a copy by Del Rey, and I was so excited for this book because it's set in the 1950s. I'm a huge fan of vintage fashion. We are following a Mexican protagonist, which is just fucking great. I'm always starved to see more Black and more Latinx faces in horror. And as somebody who is Mexican, I was super excited about this book.
Emphasis on the was.
In this book, we are following Noemi Toboada, who is a beautiful socialite. She's part of high society. Everybody loves her. And one day she receives a very disturbing letter from her cousin, who has recently married this ridiculously wealthy man and moved out into the middle of nowhere with him and his family.
Because that always works out well for women.
Her father is alarmed by the letter, but he feels it would be impolite for him to kind of show up at the house and accuse the new husband of being inappropriate. So he does the gentleman thing and sends his daughter to do his dirty work for him.
Love that for her.
So she kind of shows up at this mansion and they're trying to convince her that like everything's Gucci. And things are not Gucci. And that is essentially the driving force of this novel. Noemi, of course, gets trapped in this house of horrors. She's not sure what's going on. Everything is frustrating. The concept of the book absolutely pulled me in, and I wanted to love it because it has all of the elements of a fantastic, scary story. We have the person who is trapped in a gorgeous old house that they can't escape. You have a rescue mission, but you're not really sure if the person needs to be rescued or if you're imagining things. There's a heavy psychological component to this story and a really intense mystery. It definitely is an exploration of violence and madness and just all of the dark, gooey stuff that I absolutely love. Why didn't I love this novel? Let's talk about that. I feel like I'm betraying my ancestors. I didn't love it. I'm sorry. It sucked. It sucked so much. Okay, I'm just gonna word vomit and it's not even going to be eloquent.
Let's talk about the characters.
I didn't care about any of them. I didn't care about Noemi. I didn't care about the cousin who needed to be rescued. The love interest was he was like salt. That's how spicy he was, okay?
Sucked.
The villains were not compelling to me at all. They weren't evil for the sake of evil, but whatever the step below that is what they were. They just were very one-dimensional, not interesting. I literally finished the book, figured out what the mystery was, finished the book, and I felt nothing. And it's so rare that a book elicits such a non-response from me. I also just wasn't impressed by the writing at all. I didn't think that the writing did a good job of capturing the atmosphere or capitalizing on the atmosphere that the synopsis promised us. It did feel disturbing and unsettling, and that's because when you figure out what the mystery is or when you start getting introduced to what the mystery is, it's super fucking gross. Like, it's just gross. And so if you're squeamish and you're like yucked out and you enjoy kind of feeling unsettled and grossed out, this is probably a great book for you. I do enjoy that sensation, again, because of who I am as a person. Look at the matching. Yas, honey. I should take a Bookstagram photo with this. I need to focus. There are definitely some content warnings for this book. Sexual assault, violence, incest. So be aware of those things going into this book. I just personally, when we found out what the mystery was, it was creepy, but it wasn't scary. It was kind of gross. I can't talk about it because it's gonna spoil everything. I'm so curious to know people's thoughts on this book when it does come out. July of 2020 is the publication date for this book. I wanted to love it, hated it, gave it 2 stars. All right, and that is going to do it for this video. I would absolutely love to know what you thought of this kind of introduction to this series, and please comment down below and give me ideas on the types of episodes you would like me to do for this series. We could do like creepy boarding schools, we could do serial killers, we could do, I don't know, books about cannibals. I don't know. Whatever ideas people seem the most interested in are the videos that I'm gonna try and put out for this series. You probably will see reading vlogs for this series if you are interested. Just let me know. I'm also going to be launching pretty soon, but don't tell anybody, Fantasy Fridays and Sci-Fi Saturdays, so I'm really excited. So what I wanna do like once a month or maybe once every 2 months is drop like a Thriller Thursday, Fantasy Friday, and Sci-Fi Saturday like right in a row. I don't know, I'm just really excited. I feel like there's so many great possibilities for this series. If you liked this episode, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel because I would absolutely love it if you became a part of my dapper family. All of my social media links are going to be in the description box below. Stay safe, and I can't wait to see you in my next video.